I have an old man videoing me from up top. That's fucking weird.
Now the journey doesn't end here. This is the way.
Welcome to a brand new series here on BLADES and Mandalore called Blades and Beskar. It's a Lord of the Rings and Star Wars fusion series where we talk about the similarities, the differences, and even the intricacies of some of my most beloved universes. Now, for some people, you might think, what do these two series even have in common? And for that, it's the genre of fantasy. Now, Star Wars can't necessarily be categorized under science fiction, even though it has elements of futuristic concepts of our known science today. It really falls under the fantasy category for me, or even a science fantasy. Now, I fell in love with Lord of the Rings and the whole universe through Beyond the Dune Sea and their most recent videos and their trilogy about the big movies and them breaking down the extended editions, everything in the background. I could not get enough. I watched every single one of the extended editions on the plane when I was going to Japan. Amazing, by the way, amazing. I've watched them all before and I've enjoyed them before, but I've never really seen it through the same lens that Beyond the Dune Sea allowed me to view it in for this first time. It's truly something that, has just resonated so much with me, and I've just found a newfound love and really appreciation. Now, and also some of you might be thinking, Jeremy, you don't have the lightsaber. What the hell's that? Yeah, I've got a fucking sword, bitches. How sick is that sword? And you know what? You might be like, it's just a fake one and it's got it's in a sheath. Oh, yeah. It's a legitimate sword. It's a legitimate sword. If I can fucking put it back in. Oh, God, this feels so dangerous. So I put out the topic on my Instagram earlier this week. I talked about how I think Star Wars is fantasy, and I asked everyone what they thought, and I think it's kind of a good way to start off the brand new episode and the brand new series with the fan segment. Now, this one wasn't necessarily like an open-ended ask me a question. It's just tell me what you think. So what I put here, oh my gosh. See, I've opened up to my notes for the actual fucking thing. This is the problem with being unorganized, people. BLADES and Mandalore is organized to a point, and then I just fucking lose it. All right, so for the fan segment, you heard what I said before. I have Tia Galanos. She says, well, it's basically Star Trek, so I'd say science fiction. Now, that's my beautiful girlfriend. I contemplated for a very brief moment breaking up with her. Very, very brief. Like, probably a good 5 seconds. Until she said, kidding, hee hee, X. That cute bitch. If anyone says Star Trek and Star Wars are the same, mate, go to jail. Go to horny jail. The Ray side says fantasy. Tales from Prettier says fantasy. You're telling me a giant glowing burritos are sci-fi? Nah, bruh. Love heart emoji. Darth Christensen 17 said, Star Wars is a space fantasy because the Force is magical while the Jedi and Sith are religions. Ashton Sharrett said, science fantasy. And I have got the final ones right here, if I can open up a single page at a fucking time. Classic Martin said, fantasy big time. No questions about it. Sorry to be boring. You're not being boring. You answered it perfectly. And I love you. Star Wars Nerd 00. I can see it being both. After our conversation, but if I had to choose, it's easily fantasy. Now, quickly on that one, go check out Tales from Prettier. I've done a collaboration video with them, and we just talk about, you know, our origins of our love for the franchise and kind of a bit of an interview process. I am partway through the editing process, and I have a message to finish off the fans segment from my good friend, the Galactic Cantina. I mean, just seriously giving incredible, absolutely incredible takes all the fucking time. Can't really stop this dude from fucking just succeeding. Basically, Galactic Cantina says, for sure, Star Wars has some sci-fi elements like spaceships, pew-pew blasters, and aliens, but in the end, it leans more towards fantasy. While sci-fi is more about the future and technology, Star Wars is from a long time ago, with the medieval influences such as mythological force, monks, wizards, knights, and witches. Those things are what defines a fantasy tale for me. I feel like, I mean, that comment right there, it just completely encapsulates basically this whole episode. You'll see later on as well, but I think it's really important to know that a fantasy doesn't just have to kind of sit in the category of, you know, swords and sorcery and just specifics with knights and round tables and all that kind of shit. It can be set in a galaxy far, far away. We can have these stories in a different format that, you know, it might not fit into the exact category of fantasy. It might be more of a science fantasy, but it still works. And I mean, honestly, it's what makes Star Wars so special. The fact that it's not a sci-fi where it relies so heavily on the specifics of our physical world, where we can dive into this magical land of the unknown. It's exciting, and I love it. I absolutely love it. Thank you so much for your comment, dude. I'm going to send you right back to the video. All right, catch you guys. Now, I wanted to start off with the definition of fantasy. Now, this is Wikipedia, so it's not necessarily something that is a reputable source, but it's a generalized theme that I kind of want to expand on. Fantasy is a genre of speculative fiction which involves themes of the supernatural, magic, and imaginary worlds and creatures. Now, it doesn't really categorize itself as certain things. It's necessarily just a universe in which it is not the same as our own, as it has magical themes or just things that we can't have in our own universe, like wizards, that we know of, that we fucking know of. You know, it's not necessarily going to be something which is like science fiction, which is, I mean, blatantly realistic. It's realistic themes and with the future of the technology that we have at the time. Now, I went on to masterclass.com and I looked at the types of fantasy that they had listed there. Now, this is from some of the biggest storytellers in the world. I mean, all of them have done amazing masterclasses on this, talking about storytelling and how to design your own world within the cinema and story. Now, I got actually multiple understandings and categories of fantasy. I actually have about five here. So the first one being high or epic fantasy. Set in a magical environment that has its own rules and physical laws. Its plots and themes have a grand scale and typically center on a single, well-developed hero or band of heroes. Now, an example of that one would be Lord of the Rings. Now, we do follow Frodo, but we also follow Gandalf, and we follow like Aragorn, and I mean the whole crew. We have the band of heroes. We have our individual, well-developed heroes through the books and through other means of, you know, The Hobbit and so on, depending on when you've watched it. We have low fantasy, set in the real world with unexpected magical elements. An example of that would kind of be like toys that come to life, right? So you've got your regular life. You know, you're getting in your fucking Honda Civic, going to work, and you pick up You pick up all of these random toys from you know, I'm trying to think of an American thing because I've got a bunch of American viewers now. A Goodwill. You go to Goodwill, you pick up little army soldiers. Next thing you know, they're in front of you and they're fucking walking around. Oh my god, that's incredible. That's low fantasy. Then we've got magical realism. While similar to low fantasy, magical realism characters accept fantastical elements as a normal part of their otherwise realistic world. Now, a way that I like to look at that is through Harry Potter. You get to see a lot of our real life problems, our real life scenarios, and then you have a magical side of it where, you know, all kids go to school and you've got your whole life. But then there's one time where a guy rocks up to your door and he says, "Hey, Harry, you're a wizard." And then he just goes, "Hey, I'm going to take you to a school." Hagrid doesn't sound like that. He just turned really Scottish for a second. But, you know, it's very much a way to describe something that is real life with magical elements. Harry Potter's just a copy of Star Wars in the end. I'll go into that in another episode. I like Harry Potter. I do. But it's just such a blatant copy of Star Wars with its own random little things in it to make it seem individual. It's bullshit. Then we've got the second last one here, Sword and Sorcery. A subset of high fantasy, it focuses on a sword-wielding hero as well as magic and witchcraft. Now, a way that I could see a story like that would be King Arthur and Merlin. You get to see Merlin, you know, who's dealing all of this magic and kind of like casting spells, and then you've got King Arthur, Knight of the Round Table, and he's just, you know, he's fucking around with a sword. Like, it's fucking sick. It is sick, all right? And then the last one, fairy tales, intended for children. They are typically set in distant magical worlds. Now, I want to dive into the fantasy element with all that kind of stuff. But before I do that, so we can see both sides of the story, I have the definition here of science fiction. Now, again, this one's from Wikipedia, so it is a generalized theme. It's not necessarily correct. It's not a very reputable fucking source. But I did edit it a little bit based on a couple of other sources to see. Realistic speculation based on solidarity on adequate knowledge of the real world, both past and present, on possible future events. An example of that is Star Trek. Now, a lot of you might be like, well, you know, Star Trek isn't really that kind of futuristic at the same time of, you know, compared to the regular stuff that they had at the time. Well, you know, it actually is. If you look at the way they talk to people, it's via walkie-talkies. They talk walkie-talkie down to the fucking planet. Like, I mean, at the time, they didn't have cell phones. They didn't have all of these random cell towers that are going around where you can wirelessly call people from across the fucking world. Bonkers that stuff like that exists, but they never had it at the time. So they worked with the period of time that it was created and the technology of that period, and then they created a future, a possible future that is theoretically possible. It has elements of science and all that kind of stuff to be able to be a little more realistic. Not to the point where, you know, you're going to get some random physicist that's like, oh yes, everything and that is absolutely correct. You know, it's going to be wrong, but it's all based on the technology of the time with minor fantastical elements, okay? Because not all of it is going to be very clear, cookie cutter. It falls into the one fucking category. So, talking about Star Wars and fantasy and you know, how Lord of the Rings fits into all of that. Fantasy itself is just such a special genre. For me, I love fantasy. I've never thought of, you know, that sciencey nerd shit as something that was related to Star Wars. It's a distant galaxy, far, far away, in a world where everything around you speaks to you, it conversates with you, you feel it flow through you. You've got midichlorians in every single person. Every single person has the ability to be able to be special, to use this magical thing that is surrounding them at all times. in order for good, and you can manipulate it for bad. I mean, in a world where light swords are possible, where, you have armies of clones of one man, you have people who stand up to do the right thing in a world that is seemingly desolate and filled with anger and pain. Star Wars is a beautiful galaxy that really was designed to be able to house everything and anything. It's the reason why so many people have the ability to create their own visions of what could potentially happen for the future of certain characters. Now, a lot of you might be going, well, I guess it is possible for everything, but think about all of the theories that come out in every single show, where things are going to go, how they're going to move, and how everything fits so perfectly if you move certain characters around. And it all could be in the canon and the knowledge that we have in canon, not just the extended universe. Now, because of that, we actually do get to see a lot of upset, a lot of pain. Like everyone who goes, oh, it should have been like this, it could have been like that, Disney's fucking it up. They're going down a very safe path, sure, and they're not really doing necessarily the right thing all the time. But the sheer amount of possibilities, it's endless. If you can dream it, if you can fucking imagine it, it exists. That's what's so incredible about it. This fantastical element in it of, wizards who can lift things and control them. Yeah, everybody remembers their first time watching Star Wars, the original trilogy, seeing Yoda reach out with the Force, closing his eyes, a tiny little goblin, this little green fucking frog-eating dickhead. I'm closing my eyes, imagining this. And he's fucking running around on the back of this dude, and he's teasing him, he's fighting his robot. And this tiny man, to the powers of seemingly his own fingertips, can reach out and lift up a whole starship out of the water and place it on dry land. I vividly remember the fucking dopamine hit. You obviously have a lot of elements of like the music needing to help with like there's so many elements that go into it. I don't even have to go into the fucking music side. It's this world of pure creativity, of unrivaled imagination. And to be able to have something like that at your fingertips is just, it's magical. It's absolutely magical. And a lot of people might say, well, Jeremy, it can have elements of fantasy, but it's not necessarily going to be something of the same level that Lord of the Rings is. But think about it, right? You've got, in Lord of the Rings, Gandalf, a fucking wizard with a staff, seemingly the power harnessing from himself into the staff, being projected out, can create a blinding light that burns the eyes of orcs as they charge forth into battle. I mean, holy fuck, man. The scene where, everybody's reaction of when you shall not pass. You can't say that they don't have the same energy. They don't have the same feeling. Watching Gandalf fucking running around and destroying shit with magic from his staff is pretty much the exact same thing as picking up a rock and throwing it at someone. Now, I'm not talking about fucking Avatar: The Last Airbender, when they're doing that, and then a pebble goes across. That's fucking stupid. No. Both of these unbelievably incredible fictional universes, they allow your imagination to thrive, to grow, to just create as much as you could possibly think of. And it's something that's so special. It's something that's so special to me. I mean, I love fantasy because it's an escape. I think a lot of people can kind of see the same with that. You see Star Wars, and a lot of the fans of Star Wars, they cling onto it as their happiness. Lord of the Rings being the same. The world's getting tough. The world is hard. You've got bills to pay that you just can't afford. You're working more hours than your body can possibly catch up with just to make ends meet, to afford to feed yourself, let alone a family. You've got a couple of hours to spare. You think, all I want to do right now is not be where I am. You can turn on both of these two franchises and escape. It's something that's been really helpful for me, especially, in times where I've really struggled mentally, physically. Sometimes it's better to be in a world where you can be anything, you can be anyone, and be important. There's nothing worse than growing up where your parents have always told you can do anything, you can be anything and anyone, and you believe them. And then when you go out to do it by yourself, you realize that you can't do everything that you thought you could, that you need a lot more help than you ever thought you could. And it's a bit daunting. It's the importance of stuff like this. It's the importance of these beautiful franchises. Not everyone's going to be able to have the same story. Not everyone's going to have the the same kind of escape that a lot of us are so unbelievably blessed to have. Like, to be able to turn on a TV, you already have more luck than most of the people in this world. So to take those stories and to grow with those stories, it's kind of special. It's kind of special. Now, I mean, I could harp on for ages and ages, fucking years and years, about why I think both of those two franchises are important in itself. But I think for the purpose of this episode, I'll talk about just Star Wars. And I'll talk about, Lord of the Rings, that's for some future episodes of Blades and Beskar. But Star Wars is my bread and butter. And I'm learning a lot about Lord of the Rings. And the reason why I really wanted to do so much of this is because I wanted to be able to, learn with you guys. The more I can memorize and understand and dive deep into, and tell you guys about, then I remember myself and I grow with you. As much as it may fucking benefit me, I hope that it benefits you. Star Wars itself as a fantasy compared to being a science fiction genre, it means for me that you can do so much more with a story. Think about if you were limited to just the physicality of our own world. Hyperspace wouldn't exist. Think about the ships. None of them would ever exist. How could any of them have the thrusting power to be able to get off of our fucking planet, let alone other planets of denser oxygen and, thicker atmospheres? It's kind of cool. It's kind of cool to think about it like that and to think, oh, well, obviously the future of technology, it's going to be so much better. But we just saw SpaceX kind of land their rocket down on two random pitchforks, right? I mean, that's history in the fucking... That's not history in the making. That is history. That is... but you would never be able to think something like that was possible until it was done. But it was... personally, I believe, inspired by the absolutely incredible imagination of George Lucas and other fellow creators who designed so many of these spaceships that have influenced the time that we see right now. None of them could have the amount of fuel to hold it, but you don't need to think about something like that. Now, a lot of the time when you're watching a Star Wars movie, you're not thinking about, oh, how can an X-Wing get all the way to fucking Exegol without that big of a fuel tank? No. I mean, yeah, I was kind of thinking it at one point. I was like, how does it hold that much? But then again, they've created their own materials that have been able to harness fuel in different ways, like coaxium that we saw in Solo. So if any of you guys have typed out or were typing out a comment being like, oh, but Jeremy, they have better sources of fuel in Star Wars. That is the fantasy element. Delete your fucking comment. Comment something else, like butter chicken. Comment butter chicken if you're going to say that. Just put down below butter chicken. No context, no nothing. For anyone who doesn't watch the whole video, they're going to be like, what the fuck? Why are you putting down butter chicken? Even if you didn't think that and you wanted to do it, just put down butter chicken. So, I'm hungry. No, like, to have that fantasy element, it means that you can do so much more, that you can forget about the logistics and you can just continue with a story. How do you think the world in between worlds could ever fucking exist if it wasn't a fantasy show or a fantasy universe? You know, to be able to have something that is within two realms, to be able to take life before it even dies and save it and put it into a new time. Holy fucking wild. To conversate with ghosts. How do you think Force Ghosts could be possible if it was ever in a strictly science fiction based universe? I'm telling you, it's fucking not. It's absolutely not. And you know, it's so cool to be able to see stuff like that, and I mean to enjoy the universe that we've been given. Sorry, your boy's thirsty. So you know, I'll kind of finish off the episode with that one. But you know, I'll talk about the future of kind of what I want to do. I've got a couple of little bit of projects in the pipeline, but I'll finish it off with. Although Star Wars and Lord of the Rings are not necessarily one and a whole, two of them allow us to be able to create, to imagine, and give us a universe in which we can escape and be the hero that we always wanted to be, to imagine ourselves in the role of whoever we're watching on the screen, to be able to pick up in a friendship group and say, oh, I'm Aragorn, or I'm Legolas, you know, I'm Gimli. You know, to be able to have these characters that are seemingly so close to our real life, yet so distant in such a good way. It's special. It's super, super special. And Star Wars, it's never going to have, for all of you fucking random haters out there, because I see it. It's like, oh, well, the Holdo maneuver could not be fucking possible, and it breaks the laws. It breaks the laws of physics. It's like, well, yeah, brother, of course it's going to fucking break the laws of physics. It's a fucking fantasy movie. It's a fictional universe, brother. It's not always going to work the same. Like, you've got Holdo breaking through, like turning around using the last bit of fucking stores of fuel. Kookaburra, I hope you guys saw that. I hope you saw that. You know, you're seeing Holdo use the last reserve of fuel to be able to fucking get off and to save the people who are fucking leaving in these tiny little, fucking reserve ships. Oh my god, the Kookaburra is coming closer. Hopefully he comes in so I can be like. Anyways, he's looking at me like he's gonna. Brother, what are you doing? What are you doing, brother? Anyways, so you know, it's really cool to be able to enjoy something like that without looking at the physics into it. I personally think that is one of the coolest fucking scenes in all of the sequel trilogy. I mean, you see the cracks go right through that massive ship. It's like, what? How the fuck could you hate on that? How could you be upset with anything that comes out of a scene that fucking badass? You know, I hope in the future we can see more fantasy elements going into new shows like Ahsoka and also Mando. I just think it adds a lot of nostalgia onto an already incredibly well presented and well set out universe. You know, to have the Mandalorian be able to be a regular person in this world where anything can happen makes you feel like you could be there. Like I could be that person. I could be the Mandalorian. Under that helmet, maybe I am. But under that helmet, you could be that character. And I love it. I'm forever grateful to be able to have those kind of things. And I hope that Disney is able to see something like this and to kind of move on with this random pick me fucking attitude that they've been having, where everything's got to be you know, fucking woke and all this kind of shit and appeal to the current time. Make it so that the kid who's sitting at home, who can't afford to do too much, who is not really having the best day, and maybe they've been bullied like everyone is when they're kids. Make it, that's so cool. Make it so that they can have the magic at home. That's all. That's really all. So for the future of Blades and Beskar, get ready for some sick dive in to some of the coolest fucking movies. I really want to be doing a bunch of different breakdowns of like character analysis, comparing different characters to Star Wars characters. You know, like how are Gandalf and Yoda the same character? I mean, I just made that up on the spot. But, you know, looking at even fighting styles, how they fight in there compared to how they fight in, you know, I mean, traditional sword fight. Obviously, you've got Aragorn with his sword. Compare that to a lightsaber. I think it'd be, you know, it's got a lot of potential for the future. Help me, help you. I mean, I just want to learn with you guys. I want to learn with everyone. I want to see how this goes. I want to grow with you guys and grow this channel as much as possible. It is a Star Wars show, but we also love everything to do with our nerd universe. So on that note, I love you all. Thank you so much for watching. I hope you guys enjoyed this one, and I'll catch you in the next one. All right. Love you. Bye.